Hey guys, I want to talk about Bitcoin. I want to talk about Bitcoin because it is one of those things that I'm looking at and I'm like, hey, wait a second here. This thing is crashing. And if you've seen my last two videos, you'll know I like talking about things that are crashing. So I want to give you guys my thoughts about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general, and I want to talk about like what are some of the things that are driving the crash in cryptos that we've been seeing. And by the time this video comes out, who knows? Maybe the crypto markets have jumped up in value. But at the moment, Bitcoin is currently trading at about $21,000 per coin. That's pretty good. It's up a little bit from where I saw it at just a couple of days ago, which was down in 17.5, which is crazy to think about, given that last year it was in the 60s. So you can see how far it's fallen from peak. That's pretty darn incredible that Bitcoin has fallen so much and so far and so hard. Not as much as some other stocks out there, to be sure, but it's still a pretty darn impressive fall. Bitcoin has fallen, what is that? Year to date, it's down 56%. From 1 year ago, it's down 39%. From all-time highs, it's down 67%. So it's not exactly doing great at the moment. So let's talk about why. One of the things that people have talked about Bitcoin for a long time is that Bitcoin is going to stop, is going to be a store against inflation, but inflation has been happening and Bitcoin's been crumbling. So what is going on here? And what I think is going on here is the Federal Reserve. And again, it's like crypto. That's going to be our thing to keep from manipulation on currency, blah, 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 whatever. But one of the things that I'm looking at is how much Bitcoin is in existence and how much dollars are in existence. And you can and if you want the price of Bitcoin, dollars per coin, all that you really need to do is you could take the number of dollars that exist and divide them by the number of Bitcoin that exist. That's such a simple thing to do, but it gets you in the right units at least, right? It gets you in dollars per Bitcoin. And when you do that, you get a number that is absurd. It's $1.1 million per Bitcoin. But I don't think you're ever going to see that. And the reason why I don't think you're ever going to see $1.1 million per Bitcoin is because that makes a very crucial assumption. And that assumption is simply that Bitcoins and dollars are perfectly exchangeable. You can exchange one for the other and it has the exact same utility. So if you look at the price of Bitcoin today and you say, what does that imply about the utility of Bitcoin? Well, what you can do is you can take that $1.1 million figure per Bitcoin that we've looked at, and you can divide that by the current price of Bitcoin, and that will tell you something about the utility of Bitcoins to dollars, right? And what you end up seeing is that the current price implies that a dollar is worth 55 times as much in Bitcoin in terms of its utility, right? So Bitcoin is 55 times worse than a dollar in terms of being able to transact, being able to store value, being a unit of measure, right, as a currency. It's 55 times worse. This is just math, right? So don't, you Bitcoin lovers, don't go hating on me. All I'm doing is just doing some math, doing ratios, right? Dividing this number by that number, dividing that number by this number, and we get a sense of what it is. So dollars are more useful. The market is telling us that dollars are more useful than Bitcoin. And we know that dollars are worth 55 times in terms of utility what a Bitcoin is worth. So the question then becomes, are we going to get to a point where Bitcoin becomes worth, is that utility going to shrink, or is it going to grow over time? Here's the issue. The Federal Reserve at the moment is pulling dollars out of the economy, right? The number of dollars has been shrinking for the past 3 months. Not very quickly, but it has been shrinking. At the same time, Bitcoin, the number of Bitcoin in existence has been growing, and it's been growing faster and faster because people have been jumping into and out of crypto markets much more regularly. And the more transactions that happen, the more mining that needs to happen, and the more mining that happens, the more Bitcoin that gets created. That's just the way that Bitcoin is designed. So on this one hand, you have the number of Bitcoin increasing, the denominator of Bitcoin increasing, and the numerator, dollars, decreasing. And so what that's going to do is it's going to drive down the price, right? You have two things working in the same direction. Now, has it been enough? Now, remember, there's 55 times leverage on the dollar. Then you can think of it as leverage on the dollar over the Bitcoin, right? And implied in that price. And so tiny little movements in those things are going to create massive changes in the valuation of Bitcoin. If you increase the dollar, you're going to increase the price per Bitcoin much faster, right? Because you're increasing the numerator on that number. And so the way I like to think of it is that there's just been this incredible slowdown in the creation of dollars. There's been this incredible increase in the creation of Bitcoin, which we'll say that it's fairly constant, but we know that it's been growing a little bit at the very least. Bitcoin is set to half the mining in, I think it's 2 more years. So we've got 2 more years of growth at the current rate of Bitcoin. So that's just going to be what it does, right? And for the foreseeable future, as an economist, I'm thinking that we're going to see the Fed continue to pull back, and they're going to want to pull and decrease their balance sheet, which means they're going to start sucking money out of the economy. All that to say is that I think we're headed for a painful period for Bitcoin, and it's just the way that it's going to be. It's just the way that it's going to be, right? Bitcoin is going to be in the suffering mood. The other thing too is that, and this goes for Bitcoin and Tesla and a number of other companies out there, they've never been through a recession. We've never seen what Bitcoin does in the middle of a recession. Bitcoin was born at the tail end of the financial crisis. We've never, ever, ever seen what cryptocurrency does in a recession. It's never happened. It's never happened. And so, is it going to hold its value? Is it going to collapse to nothing? We don't know. Is there a recession going on right now? Maybe. It hasn't been called yet. But we have no idea how Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general are going to react to a recession. It's just not in the data, right? And so we've got this tightening of monetary policy. The number of dollars are decreasing. The number of Bitcoin is increasing. That's going to cause the price of Bitcoin to fall. We know that it's going to fall faster, and faster, because dollars have more utility than Bitcoins do. And so you're going to, as that ratio changes, dollars are going to become more valuable than Bitcoin. And so you're going to see that inflation there of dollars to Bitcoin. And so it's just going to be one of those things. And then on top of that, we're due for a recession. I don't know when a recession is going to happen, but imagine that, like, you got tightening monetary policy and there's a recession going on when people want cash, right? So that they can survive, so they can pay their mortgage, so they can do blah, 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 right? Yeah, it's going to be interesting, to say the least. But all that being said, right, that's some very simplistic analysis around, like, what is a Bitcoin worth. That analysis also assumes, right, that Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency, which we know it's not, and that it's not going to compete with these other currencies, which we know that it is. So all of this stuff is combining into this massive swirling mess that is trying to value Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I don't think that anybody really has a good handle on it yet. I know that I don't. And I basically stick it in the too hard pile right now. Is that the right thing to do? Maybe not. Time will tell. But I think that it's that's one of the things that you have to look for. The other thing too is, what is the expected value of Bitcoin, right? The law of iterated expectations says that if at any future point my expectation of the value of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is zero, then its current value must be zero today. That's the law of iterated expectations. It's just a thing that exists. It's a mathematical fact, right? So the question that I end up having is, what happens if we move on to something else, right? Like, what happens if cryptocurrency, once it's not the shiny new thing, and there's something new, are people going to forget about it? Is this just a fad? Is the expected value of Bitcoin, of cryptocurrency in 10, 20 years, zero? If that's the case, it's zero today, right? And so it doesn't even matter, what the optimal exchange rate is in a world where cryptocurrency is completely interchangeable with money, and it's just a matter of which one has, if there's more dollars in existence or if there's more Bitcoin in existence, and blah, 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 right? It doesn't matter if it goes to zero in the future. If you have any expectation that it goes to zero in the future, it's worth nothing today. That's just math. That's just math, right? And so the question then becomes, should you put money in Bitcoin? Should you buy the dip in Bitcoin? Should you buy the dip in cryptocurrencies? And the thing that I keep coming back to is that, one, you're in for a world of pain, even if it doesn't go to zero in the future. In the near term, you're in the world for pain. And then if it does go to zero in the future, if you have any expectation that cryptocurrency Bitcoin goes to zero in the future, it's essentially a tulip bulb. It's worth nothing today. Don't put money into it, right? That's the thing that I keep looking at is cryptocurrency going to be worth anything in the future? It doesn't matter how far into the future it is, right? It could be 1 year from today. It could be 100 years from today. But if it goes to zero at any point in the future, it's worth zero today. Period. Right? No, we might be able to get fancy and discount expectations and do something like that or blah, 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 and then it's not. But you get the idea though, right? Like, if it goes to zero, it's going to zero, and you might as well not buy it today. And so looking out, how far out is it? How much could I discount that expectation? Blah, blah, blah. All of it just gets way too hard for me. And I look at it and I go, look, the maximum that you could ever pay for a Bitcoin is the number of dollars in existence divided by the number of Bitcoin in existence. And that's a big number. So I could be right in that it goes to zero. It could be wrong. The future is just, for cryptocurrency, for Bitcoin, it's just too hard for me to evaluate. And so I put it in my too hard pile and I don't touch it. That's what I do. You can do whatever you want with cryptocurrency, right? Like, there is room for huge explosive growth, or it goes to nothing, right? And what that future looks like, again, I can't tell you. I don't know enough. There's not enough information for me to go with. And so I put it in my too hard pile and I just go and I buy assets that produce things, right? That create cash flow generative assets. Cryptocurrency, it's just too hard. That's me. Take it for what it's worth. All right, guys. As much as I enjoy talking about cryptocurrency with you guys, I'm going to call it. Peace out. Have a great day.